This is WPSL Port St. Lucie.
The opinions on this program are those of the program host and guest and not necessarily those of WPSL. WPSL does not endorse products that may be mentioned. Any reproduction or retransmission of this broadcast is strictly prohibited without written consent of WPSL. Legal questions? Ask a lawyer. Give us a call at 340-1590, 340-1590 here at the studios of WPSL. And Ask a Lawyer with your host, attorney Stuart M. Address.
Good morning, North America. We're not going to say Treasure Coast anymore. Right now on Facebook Live, we have South Florida, we have California, and we have somebody who hails from tiny little town in Canada. So I guess people are listening and watching. Anyway, so hello everybody. Hope you had a good week. Hope you're looking forward to a weekend. I hope it's a warmer weekend so that I'm not wasting all that money on my pool heater that couldn't use last weekend because never was able to get into it.
I told you it was going to rain.
I know. What can I tell you? I do have, before we go to our first call, which is already waiting, I do have one shout out to make, a real brand new listener, very important, to the show. Hello, Bentley. It's nice to have you listening to us. And let me just say hello to you in your native language. All right, with that, we have John on line one. Hello, John.
Hey, hello, Stuart. What is your last name again? When they say it every time, I always miss it.
It's Address, just like address. I know where you live.
And you have an office up in
in Stuart, right. Stuart Address in Stuart.
Who has a Stuart address?
I have a Stuart address.
That's why I can't get it right.
There you go.
A lot of people have that problem. We had one woman who called the office one day, and my paralegal patches it through to me, so I answer the phone. Stuart Address? She says, yes. I said, Stuart Address? Yes. I said, this is Stuart Address. Well, what's your address? I said, I've heard that many times. Huh?
Yeah.
She hung up. All she wanted was our Stuart Address.
Who's on first?
She had no idea who I was.
Abbott and Costello.
You got it. And I play a good Abbott.
I got a condo question for you
Sure,
again.
shoot.
Now, when a limited proxy goes out so that people can vote if they're not there, is it proper for the board on that proxy, when it says under limited powers boldly printed and underlined, for your vote to count on the following issues, you must indicate your preference in the blanks provided below. But then below that it says, in parentheses, the board of directors are in favor of all items listed below and recommends the membership vote in favor as well.
I don't think that's proper to be on the ballot.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything inappropriate for the board to have a memo, an email, something posted, anything like that indicates the board's recommendations. In fact, I think in many respects that's what you hire a board for. And the community is free to disregard it, obviously. But on the actual ballot, I don't know if there's a statutory provision on that or not, but I would think that would be crossing over a line. That's advocacy as opposed to, just balloting.
Yeah, because this is right in the middle of the page. On the top of the page, of course, it says the limited proxy, and it has where you put in your unit number. And then you can sign A for the secretary, or B, you can write in someone to be your proxy. And then below where it says the board recommends this, they have the yes or the no answers to the amendments. Now, if you attend, and let's assume you have an annual meeting where you can do this,
right?
Shouldn't they hand out ballots to the people that are in attendance?
Well, of course.
Yeah, because they didn't even have that. Everybody that was there thought they were supposed to vote on the proxy, and I kept telling the people sitting next to me, no, don't hand in the proxy, because then you're going to get voted, and then they're going to count you as twice as far as a quorum goes, because you signed in, and then you're going to hand them a proxy. They're going to count the proxy, so you're going to have double the amount.
Well, first of all, they shouldn't be counting double. I mean, they should be smarter than that. The proxy is to give the authority to cast your vote to somebody else that you designate. That's all that is. And usually the bylaws of most HOAs that I've seen require that if you have executed a proxy, you must be absent from the vote. If you are present, the proxy is null and void, and you must vote on your own.
Exactly. And the trouble is we haven't had a quorum for an annual meeting in so long that people just don't know how an annual meeting functions anymore in our community. It's been literally 20 years.
Right.
And we know how to do an election meeting, but the trouble is the election meeting is always on the agenda of the annual meeting, and that's where the confusion comes in. You know, they don't separate the two, you know. And we did have a monitor. Unfortunately, she wasn't a certified state monitor.
Right.
She was a monitor from our attorney's office. And then she stepped in it again because at the end of it, first she announced that we didn't have a quorum. Then she tried to say we did by proxies, but then 15 of those proxies did not have unit numbers on there.
Right.
They were just signed. And
sort of like the typical Palm Beach absentee ballots.
Ay. But those ballots, I mean, if you know, you can't go later on and continue the meeting, so to say, and adjourn and try to get those ballots corrected.
No, there are definitely prescribed rules and procedures, you know, in the statute for homeowner associations, condo associations, mobile home associations. There are 3 different chapters of Florida statutes, and you know, in this respect, I believe they're all the same, you know, and provide for how to have an annual meeting, what notice is required for an annual meeting, and how to proceed, you know, with the election for members of the board. I agree. I'm pretty darn sure that you can't adjourn the meeting or recess the meeting so that proxies can be fixed. You know, if the meeting's been properly noticed, then either you have members in attendance and appropriate proxies, and you have sufficient numbers, you know, for the election to proceed, or you don't. Now, if you don't, then it can be renoticed, and hopefully enough people are mobilized to get the sufficient number there, either in person or by proxy. But no, you can't. You can't cancel an election or invalidate an election just to go, you know, fix. Oh, these people made mistakes in their unit numbers. You know, let's go have them fix it. That's not the way an election works.
Yeah, let me correct. I'm trying to throw too much at you. As far as the election goes, that was okay. We got the election done. But these proxies that I spoke about that did not have the unit numbers were the limited proxies. The limited proxies were only pertaining to the amendments because we wanted to amend our docs.
Okay.
And to me, she tried to, because in our later that night, I went back and I looked at our bylaws, and it actually says if any meeting of the membership cannot be organized because a quorum is not in attendance, the members who are present, either in person or proxy, may adjourn. And I'm thinking, well, how do you adjourn a meeting that never convened? And who has the authority to be the chairman when you can't elect the chairman if you don't have a quorum?
Well, okay.
I mean, even our docs are confusing.
Presumably, first of all, you follow Florida statutes in those situations, but presumably, even if you don't technically have a sufficient quorum to conduct business at a meeting, that doesn't mean the meeting doesn't exist. It just means that business could not be conducted. Now, presumably, you do have a chairperson, whether it is president of the board of directors or somebody else, that is running the meeting. That person, under Robert's Rules of Order, you know, has the authority to determine that a quorum is not present and to adjourn the meeting, because there is, in fact, a meeting.
We never elected a chairman of the meeting because that was on the agenda for the annual meeting.
Well, who would then normally run the meeting?
Well, that's what we were confused. This election monitor from our attorney's office seemed to take over, and she had no authority because she's not a member to call for a vote to either adjourn or to close the meeting.
I don't think that's proper either. I would presume that if you haven't elected somebody to run the meeting, I'd be interested in looking, you know, at your bylaws. I suspect that the president of the board.
Well, I'm looking right at it right now, and it doesn't name anyone. in the bylaw, and that little thing I read to you.
You know,
it just says,
that's when lawyers like me, we start going back to the statute, we start researching case law, but my suspicion would be the president of the board is the one who has authority to run the meeting.
I agree. He should have stepped up, and he should have took charge, but unfortunately, he's over 90, and we have a very weak board to begin with. But my last question to you is, when they did do these amendments, and they sent out the second notice, and they wrote up the part of the our doc that they wanted to amend.
Right.
They wrote it up wrong. They excluded some of the wording from the actual article that they were amending, and they didn't underline certain parts that they were adding.
Right.
Does that make the whole amendment process null and void?
If the amendment is not presented in accordance with statutory requirements, then the vote on the amendment, you can call it void, it's voidable. You know, it's not really void unless somebody challenges it, and then if they don't agree, then you got to go to court. So void or voidable, but if it's not done properly, it's not going to have legal effect if challenged.
Yes, and I understand. Anybody can sue over anything, but you just said
that's right. In this country, that's exactly
effect.
Right.
Legal effect is the key word you mentioned.
Right. I would not think that an amendment that is not properly placed on the ballot in terms of notice and in terms of language and presentation would be effective. I would think it would have to be redone.
Yeah, because you got to, that notice, when you send out that notice, and I'm reading from the notice what they want to amend, it has to be word for word verbatim as far as the underlining of what they're adding, and strike out what they want.
And I would argue, even if that's not a requirement, that if you are going to put the language onto the ballot, then there is an obligation for it to be accurate. So if you're going to then insert the language there, I would be arguing, if I had the appropriate client, that the misleading nature of how the amendment was presented subjects the vote in that regard to being without legal basis.
Yes, and I agree. And thank you so much for answering
You're
all
welcome.
that.
Thank you for calling. I appreciate it.
Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye. Some very interesting questions on homeowners associations, condo associations. It does get confusing. There are lots of statutes that are very clear in terms of lots of the requirements. But like any law, it's not all in there. A lot of times you got to research the case law and find out what the 4th DCA, the 5th DCA, the 1st DCA, when they've been faced with different types of cases, how have they analyzed it? What have they decided? Because that's when you go to an attorney, that's where you get the analysis of, is this okay or is this not okay? Do you have a viable claim? Don't you have a viable claim? And even practically, is it worth it? Because if something is technically wrong because the I was not dotted, but all they're going to do is fix it, and they're going to be able to fix it with another piece of paper and another vote, why fight it? Why spend all that money to fight it? It's just, as a lawyer, I'm going to give the legal advice. As a counselor, I'm going to give practical advice. If they're just going to be able to fix it without any doubt, question, why bother? Now, if in the process of them having to fix it, you have sufficient time now to mobilize the opposition, that's another story. Maybe a good reason then to challenge the technicalities. When I was in law school, one of the first things they taught us in civil procedure was look at the summons, look for spelling mistakes, look for typos, because you can attack those as possibly not being proper service process. And sometimes that attack, even though it's procedural in nature and it can be fixed, gives you the time you need to do something you might want to do.
Okay, so it opens the door to
right.
To
so
do,
for example, if you wanted to be the plaintiff in a lawsuit because you perceive there's some advantage to going first and going last. But somebody beats you to the punch and you're sued. But there's a defect in the summons. Get the case dismissed, and before they file their amendment, file your own lawsuit. Ooh, now all of a sudden you're the plaintiff. So there are reasons to try to do this sometimes. But if doing it, this is one of the things you learn as a lawyer. They don't teach it to you in law school. If doing something that you can do because you see the defect is not going to accomplish a goal and is just going to cost the client money, then practically speaking, it's my obligation to say to the client, let's just move on. Let's go to the things that are going to be cost effective in terms of trying to defend or attack or what have you. Let's not focus on this little technicality that, instead of saying, Bill Smith III, it says Bill Smith Jr. Yeah, they're two different people. But if Bill Smith III is the one they meant and Bill Smith III is the one that actually got served, yeah, you could probably get it dismissed and they'll redo it. But if that extra time is not going to give you an advantage, why bother?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so let me tell you a little bit of what's going on before we move into some interesting questions. I am likely not going to be here next Friday. My son's high school band is going on their annual band trip to Washington, D.C. this year. Now, Washington, D.C. is where I went to law school, and I have not been there for 32 years. So I am scheduled to be a chaperone. Now, am I excited about it? Sure, going back to D.C. after all that time, being able to show my son not only the sites they have scheduled for everybody to see, which is a pretty good schedule.
Yeah.
But to take him to the Supreme Court, to take him to my law school, yeah, I'm excited. Am I excited to travel 17 hours by bus there? Sleep on the bus going? Me, with my back problems? Come back on a bus for 17 hours?
You may be out the next Friday, too.
I said they
Could there be a chiropractor in your future?
Right, they may have to bring me home on a stretcher. I don't know. So I most likely will not be here Friday unless I wimp out on the trip. But if it was any other trip, if they were going to Chattanooga, I would wimp out because of my back issues. Washington, D.C., that's hard.
Mm-hmm.
That's hard for me to say no. I would be disappointed. I think my son would be disappointed because he knows that's where I went to school, and it's nice to go see certain things with the group. But even when you're 15 and don't always want to be with your dad, it's also nice sometimes to go with your dad, to the Capitol, to the Supreme Court, to his law school, and see what life was really like. So I'm doing my best to make that trip, even though I think.
Oh, and it's spring. It'll be beautiful there.
Well, no. The weather forecast for D.C. next week has one day which includes snow flurries.
Oh, really?
Now, I think my son would love that because he's never seen snow at all. I would love it more if it was like 10 inches and, gee, we had to stay in the hotel or something and find something to do and have fun. I've been stranded in D.C. twice with blizzards where we had to trek into Georgetown on foot to find food. I don't think that will happen next week, but I wouldn't mind an inch or two, a dusting, something that you can actually see. I think would be pretty cool. I'm being told, wimp out on Chattanooga? Not likely. Shirley says lots of history to see. Yeah, but I don't have an emotional connection to it. Not like D.C. All right, so.
I have to ask you, what does he play?
Well, he did play the French horn for 3 years, but then a couple concussions from karate and one stupid one from riding one of those things with wheels that you ride, the kids ride.
Like a dirt bike?
No, just wheels. It's a little.
Oh, looks like a hoverboard from Back to the
Future.
Future.
Well, riding that with your eyes closed and crashing into a wall.
Okay.
Not a very smart thing to do. So he found that the amount of air it takes to blow into the French horn was giving him headaches. So he had to abandon the French horn. He's now doing percussion.
Okay.
And I saw him doing drums one day, not drums, but steel drums one day at a band concert, and it's all synchronized, and it was with blue light and neon and everything, and it was just fascinating to watch, to see him able to do synchronization with everybody else, and to really see that he was good.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that makes a father proud.
Sure.
So he does percussion now, and whatever instrument they happen to need at the moment in percussion. And it's a lot smaller than to bring the French horn home.
Yeah.
I didn't really love the practicing of the French horn, but that's just me. Scooter, yes. Well, it's not exactly a scooter, my sister says. It's you put one foot on it and it has wheels.
Yeah. They just sort of, and you kind of just balance and go,
A
right?
skateboard. Why? I can't remember things from my own youth.
Is it a skateboard or motorized?
Well, no, it was a skateboard. He closed his eyes and he crashed into a wall. What can I tell you? My kid. Anyway, also, I will preview, as I'm sure the rabbi will next show on Ask a Rabbi, tonight at Congregation Eitz Chaim is our Purim celebration. It is dress-up Purim. And dress up in outlandish costumes that are relevant to Purim. I planned a little bit too late. I thought I might get a bundle of hay and go as Haman. Haman is the arch-villain of Purim. I don't know, maybe if anybody knows of where I can get some hay on short notice, let me know. I may still try it. The rabbi always comes in something quite unique. We don't know what she's going to do this tonight.
And she's keeping it a secret?
She's keeping it a secret, but it's always something to come see. And by the way, we stream our services on Facebook Live as well. So if you want to see what a crazy, crazy service looks like, tune in tonight at 7:30. It's not the typical service. It's going to be a little bit, you're going to see some crazy Jews having fun. It's a fun service. So 7:30 tonight, Congregation Eitz Chaim, dress up Purim. We are opposite the Met Stadium, and it's not too hard to find. The rabbi will give you all the details. And then I guess a quick question. What does a solo attorney do when his paralegal's on vacation all week?
Whatever he'd like to do.
No. Panic.
Oh.
Panic.
I just figured long lunches, start the day late,
Right,
leave
yeah.
the
Well,
office
that's true
early.
too. But, the normal work you expect to be done, even the answering of phone calls from people like this on the show who call us and are dying to speak to Cheryl. And now that Cheryl's not available all this week, she comes back on Monday. I'll have a lot of memos for her, a lot of calls she needs to follow up on, some that I've got to, some that I've left voicemails for, some people that I haven't been able to get back in touch with. But Cheryl will have a lot to catch up on Monday, and I'll make it just a little bit onerous for her. Maybe next time she won't take a vacation. How dare she? I mean, really.
Was it spring break? Did she?
No, she went on a family vacation on a
Okay.
cruise.
Great.
I hope she had a lot of good time. I'm sure. I suspect that they left on Monday. They're probably coming back tomorrow. Hey, I love cruises. Hope she had a great cruise, and hope she drank to her heart's content. Made a fool of herself at karaoke or something.
But you'll be happy she's back on Monday.
Yes, the attorney will be happy that his paralegal returns on Monday. Don't tell her that. Don't tell her I said that. But yes, paralegals are quite important. Good paralegals are quite important to attorneys. I've had paralegals in the past. My sister says I'm mean. I just said something nice. What am I mean? I've had paralegals in the past come to trial with me and have a very active role in trial. Not just passing me documents, but keying me into, things they hear the witness say and that we might not have expected to come out of their mouth, and then finding in the deposition transcript where they contradicted themselves and shoving it in my face. A very active role. And matter of fact, we had one trial where my paralegal was very, very active, and the other side from West Palm Beach had 2 attorneys and 3 paralegals with computers. You would think that those paralegals were very busy.
Were those props for, like, intimidation?
They were props.
Yeah.
Those paralegals had no authority to do anything unless they were specifically told to do something by the attorneys. They were not allowed to think for themselves. They were not allowed to know the case and say, I have an idea, and pass a note to the attorney. Oh, my goodness. Because they were speaking with my paralegal during breaks, and they saw what she was doing, and they were just in awe. And my paralegal was told they can't do anything without being told to do it. They're sitting there with those laptops ready in case the attorney passes a note, and they were just envious that my paralegal not only could pass me notes, because they could see that, but I'm up at the lectern, and I'm questioning a witness. And next thing I know, my paralegal has gotten up from counsel table, walked up behind me at the lectern, and shoving things onto the lectern for me to look at. And these other paralegals were just absolutely flabbergasted, because if they tried something like that, they'd probably be fired.
They're probably thinking, who told her she could get up?
Right, who told her she had the audacity?
Why can she get up and we can't?
Which, it goes down to a very central premise. Whether it's law or the White House or anywhere else, who do you hire? Do you hire people that are just going to say yes and do what they're told and keep their mouths shut, and their heads down?
If that's all you want them to do.
Well, then how effective are you, really?
But see, that takes a very secure person.
I agree. Current occupant of the White House is not, but, there's my little political dig. You're right. It takes a secure person. And it takes a person who also knows they have the leeway to do something like that. Because the first time could be nerve-wracking. Now, I don't know if this is a story I told. If I did, it was a year ago. I'll tell it really briefly before I go into what you want to go into. But my very first trial, while I was in law school, as a clerk, so I wasn't an attorney, I was clerking for a law firm. They had a trade name infringement trial, the Neurology Center versus the Neurology Center of Fairfax. The Neurology Center didn't like that the Neurology Center of Fairfax had the words the Neurology Center in their name. Okay. I was assigned lots of things to do. One of them had to do with the importance of intent. So I'm asked by the partner that I was working with, I'd worked with very closely for several months, to come to trial with him. And I understood it was basically, essentially the role of a paralegal. I'm going to give him documents. I'm going to, do what he says. I'm going to research things he tells me to research. I'm basically a body. I'm not an independent thinker there. I'm going into my second year of law school. It's not my business to interrupt. And what I didn't know was, also attending that particular trial, was the number one name partner of the law firm, who I had not really met because he had not been in the office very much, because he was Walter Mondale's campaign chairman for president. So he was a pretty big shot. And he decides he's going to go. I guess the client was important to him. And so we're at trial at federal court. I'm sitting at the left. This big muckety-muck partner is sitting in the center. And all the way on the right is the partner I'm used to working with, who is leading the trial of the case. And he has our client on the witness stand. And all of a sudden he says, "No further questions, Your Honor." And I think to myself, wait, you didn't ask about intent. You gave me this whole big assignment. We discussed it. We agreed it's a really important factor, to winning the case, and if we lose, to what kind of damages may be awarded against us. Why didn't you ask about intent?
Then he asked you to be there, too.
So I had to make an instantaneous decision. Do I sit there and assume he must know what he's doing? And when we have a break, ask him, why didn't you ask about intent? Or do I presume that me, Mr. First-year law student, is so smart and has the audacity in the middle of a federal court trial, the first time he's been in a real courtroom, in front of the bar, it separates the audience from the active participants, to lean in front of the senior partner of the firm, who is Walter Mondale's campaign chairman for president, which I'll admit, I don't get intimidated easily, but that was an intimidating presence to me. Lean in front of him so I could whisper to the partner I was much more comfortable with, what about intent? And because he was sitting down and cross-examination was about to start, I literally had a second or two to make that decision and communicate anything I wanted to communicate. Now, I know you all listening know the answer to the question. What did I do? I'm no wallflower. I never was, I never have been. And I'm no yes man. I realized if I made the wrong decision, I was going to be fired. Okay, fired from a law clerk job, not that horrible, but still not something you want to advertise on your resume. So I leaned in front of Mr. Mondale's campaign chairman, who was like a little shocked that I was leaning in front of him and sort of elbowing him out of the way so that I could get within earshot of the partner I knew. And I whispered to him, what about intent? And the partner jumps up, said, Your Honor, just a couple more questions if I may. Now, this is what happens to lawyers, to all lawyers. Okay? You can prepare, you could know your stuff, but in the heat of battle, sometimes you forget something. Even the best of them. And he had just forgotten intent. It was in his outline. Somehow he skipped over it and never got back to it. And so he jumps up, asks a few questions about intent, sits down. I'm still wondering whether I'm going to be fired when we have our break.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't. Matter of fact, I was kept on at the beginning of my second year of law school. And about 6 weeks later, the federal judge issues his opinion in the case, his decision. And, I go into the office one day and somebody says, the decision in Neurology Center came out. And back then they're still called secretaries. I get a secretary to give me a copy. And I'm reading it. Well, first I notice we won. Thank God. Okay? And then I see a footnote. And the footnote is about intent, which told me I made the right decision. It was an important issue, important enough to bear mentioning by the judge in issuing his opinion and his analysis. So the moral of the story, I don't hire yes people. I don't want yes people. I want somebody who's going to tell me they think I'm wrong. I want somebody who's going to think for themselves. I want somebody who's going to ask questions. I want somebody who's going to make me think from a different perspective. Because I think I'm better than. And I know in my last job when I was working with another firm and there was just two of us, we used to routinely bounce strategies, theories off of each other.
Well, thus the saying two heads are better than one.
Yes, and sometimes when you are knee-deep in a project, somebody who isn't and who gets the basic facts from you, they see and they hear different things.
Mm-hmm.
And that input is valuable. Those who surround themselves with yes people, I don't care. It's politics, it's law, corporate America.
Ego.
Well, yeah, it's ego, but my point is that they're not doing their clients a service. Now, in the case of the President of the United States, the clients are the American people. When everybody is afraid to tell the emperor he's without clothes, problems are going to ensue. And I'm not trying to make this about politics, but I do think it applies. But I think it applies much more broadly. And my perspective is you hire people who are going to challenge you, with respect, but who are going to challenge you because, just every so often, they may save the day. And I've had it happen where I've saved the day, and I've had it happen where an employee of mine has saved the day just by questioning. So, that's my perspective on that. So let me talk to you a little bit about what types of clients we tend to have, and people who tend to call us and come in for consultations, and why these different types of people are important, not only for the case, but in evaluating whether you want them as a client. We have the client who is just not likable. You just instantly don't like them. You don't think a jury's going to like them. They have a great case. I mean, they really do. I'm thinking of one case in particular. They've got a great case. Great civil rights case against the police. Absolutely had their rights abused. But you sit there thinking, what jury's going to believe them? What jury's going to want to give them money? And you got to make a tough decision on, can I somehow get through this difficult person and maybe get through to a jury? Now, one case I'm thinking of, we actually did take the case, and we had a 1-week federal trial trial. And in fact, we had an eyewitness to what happened between our client, his wife, and his kids, and an overzealous police officer. And the eyewitness happened to be a former detective from the NYPD, retired. Great witness. Mm-hmm. A witness you think is going to side with the police. Oh, and he didn't. He blasted what the officers did. We lost. I know why we lost. I prepped the husband and wife diligently. The wife did what I told her. The wife, who I also thought was disagreeable, to be polite, did not appear disagreeable on the witness stand, even during cross-examination. She took the practice that we did to heart, and she did what she had to do. Her husband, however, even when I was questioning him, so there's like a script. He knows my questions, and he knows the answer he's supposed to give. We've practiced it 10 times. He was an obnoxious, arrogant SOB responding to my questions. And then I turn him over to the other side's attorney, and all he's doing is fighting with him. I know why we lost. They didn't like him. They didn't believe him. Even though we had a former NYPD detective as an eyewitness and an expert witness who had been the chief of police in several police departments and said that the police acted unconstitutionally. We still lost. That is one type of client. When I get those clients in my office for a consultation, unless it is something extraordinary, I turn it down. Too big of a risk, I'm not going to win. And I'm going to spend 500, 1,000 hours of my time on a contingency case only to come home with nothing. So it's an important reason why we want people to come into the office before we agree to take their case. I had a woman today, this week, since I was answering phone calls, thanks, Cheryl, who was willing to have a consultation, wanted to know if we could do it by phone. And I said, no, we really can't. Skype? I said, well, I sometimes will do it by Skype if the person's out of state or something.
Was this an important case to this client? Because it doesn't sound that way.
Well, it was a potential discrimination case.
I mean, but if you can't come in,
and she was only an hour away.
How invested?
Well, I said to her, no, I said, I need you to come in. I said, because I need to observe you. I need to make an assessment as to what kind of witness I think you're going to be. I need to hear you tell me your story, and I need to make an assessment as to whether I believe you and what I think a jury might feel about you. I was very honest with her. All right, she is coming in next week. All right? But, she really didn't want to do the travel. But I wasn't going to take on a client on a contingency case who just wanted to do it by telephone, and I have no sense of who this person really is. It's just not workable. So another type, client who tells you a story. The story sounds reasonable. The story sounds believable, particularly in light of your experience as an attorney. The story doesn't sound like it's made up or anything, but the prospective client has no facts to support their claims. No documents, no emails, no written complaints, which I hate. If you're going to complain about discrimination, yes, you can legally you can do it. You can make a verbal complaint and have a case. I'm not taking it. I'm sorry.
Well, that is the evidence, right? I mean, whatever
That's
documentation.
what he said, she said.
Yeah.
If you're going to complain that he pinched your butt, he grabbed your breasts, he propositioned you, at least send an email to HR.
Mm-hmm. Or at least send him to the ER with a broken arm.
I won't advocate that. But,
No, I know. I'm just saying.
But at least send an email so that then we can see, did they do an investigation? Did they take adverse employment action against you? Or did they take prompt remedial action with respect to the alleged harasser? I can make a case. So what do you do with the client who comes in, or the prospective client who comes in, you like them, they sound credible, but they really have no way at all either to support the case or to do the things that you really want, which is at least have documentation that they made the complaint, because then when somebody says, oh, they never complained, now it's he said, she said, and it's just not what I want to take in front of a jury on a contingency case, where I want to be able to believe I'm going to win 8 times out of 10, not 5 times out of 10. So that presents difficulties for us, and sometimes it's fixable. Sometimes they're still employed, and our advice is send the email. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we even draft it for them if it looks like they're going to become a client. We at least lay that record and wait to see what happens. Sometimes it's too late. They've been fired or they've quit, and they have no proof they ever complained, and we turn it down.
It almost seems as though there was a solution to the problem. If you found another job and left, you fixed the problem.
Well, maybe you only fix it partially. You do have a duty to mitigate damages, but what if you leave a job paying you $20 an hour and the only thing you're able to find pays you $15 an hour? You still have damages. So you haven't solved the problem. Now, clients who leave, let's say, a $20 an hour job and get $22 an hour, they have fully mitigated their economic damages. That makes me wonder whether I want that case. But the reality is, under Title VII, under discrimination, they still have damages for emotional anguish. So it's not like it's not like there are no damages and you can't win money. And if they have a really good liability case, I might still take it. But if they have no economic damages anymore, I think very seriously about whether I want that case. Then you have a client comes in. Let's assume once again they're very credible. You believe everything they're telling you. You run your check and you find out they have a felony conviction for something. Unrelated to this, let's say 8 years ago. Here's the problem. Within 10 years, a judge is going to allow evidence of a prior felony conviction. You're not going to get it excluded. there is a dance that happens in court under the rules of evidence. The dance goes like this. Have you ever been convicted of a felony or a crime involving truth or dishonesty? Yes. Okay, they answered honestly. They've told the jury they're a felon. How many? 1. Let's say that's true. That's the end. The jury doesn't get to hear what they were convicted of. All they know is they're a felon once. It's certainly going to impact their credibility. It may not destroy their credibility. I have to assess that. Have you ever been convicted of a felony or a crime involving truth or dishonesty? Yes. How many? 8. I'm not taking the case.
Now, let's just say that happens. The jury doesn't get to know why. Sometimes would it be better for them to know why?
You learned so much with me. Excellent question. The other side cannot force that information out if you answer those first 2 questions correctly. You, on the other hand, if it's your client, can say whatever you want to the jury. I could say, wasn't this a felony that was $1 over the felony limit and was because a hurricane had destroyed your house and you were desperate for food for your family and you ran to Publix and you stole a bag of groceries? If that's the only conviction they have for a felony, I'll take the case and I'll tell it to the jury in opening statement. I'll take the sting out of the felony and I'll make it sympathetic. Absolutely. What happens now if either my client or the other side, a witness, ever been convicted of a felony or crime involving truth or dishonesty? No. And it's untrue. Or if they say yes, how many? And they get the number wrong. Here is where you're now allowed to introduce certified copies of the judgments of conviction and allowed to say, isn't it true that on March 15th, 2017, you were convicted of lewd and lascivious conduct on a minor under the age of 12? Yes.
There goes your case.
That witness, well, if it's the other side, that witness is done in terms of credibility.
Mm-hmm.
If it's my client, well, I better have known that up front because I'd never take the case. Not just because I'm disgusted by the crime, but
the jury would be too.
Once it comes out, I'm not going to win that case. Ain't going to happen. All right. What about prospective client comes to you? Again, they have a great case. They're not being paid minimum wage. They're not being paid overtime. They're an undocumented worker. They're not here quite legally. What do you do? Well, that's a problem. And you have to tell them it's a problem. Legally, they have every right to bring their claim. They have every right to win that case. They are still protected by our laws, in that regard, be paid a minimum wage, be paid overtime. Absolutely. Here's the problem. The judge may refer them to the Department of Homeland Security, and they may be picked up and deported.
Because technically you're not supposed to be here.
Right. So you have to let them know. It doesn't usually work that way in a courtroom. Usually a judge is not going to go blow the whistle on you. But some of them will.
But see, that's how the employers can get away with paying them less
You're
than
right.
minimum wage, which is just wrong.
You're absolutely, positively right. And sometimes it takes a class action for the undocumented worker to be willing to speak up. Because then at least it's going to make a big news stink if 100 people are rounded up and kicked out of the country because they all complained about not getting paid minimum wage from this one employer. But it is a definite risk. And it's important to tell that undocumented worker, you got a case. Now you have to decide whether you want to bring it. It's not a clear-cut answer. It's not an answer I can give to an undocumented worker. It's one they have to decide for themselves. And some will say, go for it. And some will say, I'm too fearful, which is the way a lot of them live generally anyway, in the underbelly of society. Do I have generalized sympathy for people who are not here legally? No, I don't. Are there circumstances where I can understand? Sure, there are. But when a case is presented to me where somebody is wronged, would I like to remedy that wrong? Yes. In the case of an undocumented worker, sometimes you got to wonder, for them, is it worth it? And I know we're going to run out of time, so I'm just going to finish this area. What about the client who is a basket case? An emotional wreck. And you have to figure out, are they going to be that way if we ever get to a trial? Can they withstand a deposition? Is the case going to get destroyed because they can't handle it? And you're going to have to take some horrible nominal settlement just because it becomes obvious, and the other side sees it too, they're never going to go to trial. That's a problem. Got to evaluate. I've had some basket cases.
Well, who wants to go to court?
But that's different from being a basket case because a gun was waved in your face and you had a gun incident 20 years in your past and now you're having PTSD. Not wanting to go to court, the general person, it's a little bit different in that situation. That's different from somebody who did nothing wrong but found themselves arrested and had to bear the weight of the handcuffs around their wrists. And that's what they remember. Because I had a case where that's what I talked to the jury about, the weight of the handcuffs. Because for pain and suffering, for emotional anguish, that's what she was focused on.
Not only that, sometimes when they arrest people, they're so rough. I mean,
that's the whole
it's like they're trying to
case,
break your wrist. I mean, you see that if you watch cop shows, it
hard to prove.
You're like, come on, you got the guy.
Two other quick ones, because we only have 2 minutes. What about the client who says they're in it for the principal only, and they don't care about the money? Red flag, red flag, red flags in my head. There is the occasional rare instance where somebody really is in it for the principal. Most times it's baloney.
Come on, you got to want the money.
Right. And if they won't tell me the truth in a consultation, I don't really want to be the attorney. Last one. What about the client who is told but doesn't bring important documents to the consultation? All right, sometimes you give them a very polite, gentle lecture. You tell them to send it to you if it really looks like a great case, and you move on. But other times, if they can't follow those basic instructions to even come prepared to the initial meeting, that should send some alert signals to you and make you wonder, again, if it's a contingency case, do I want it? So those are a lot of the different types of clients, who call any law firm, including ours. All right, so we have, about 30 seconds left. Gee, what can I say in 30 seconds? A lot. Well, I'll say once again, hello, Bentley. And I will say I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. Do something enjoyable. Looking forward to next week. And I probably won't be here next Friday if I'm in Washington, D.C. Maybe we can do a live broadcast from the White House lawn. But anyway, for either next week or the week after, I'll see you again for Ask a Lawyer. Have a great weekend.
This is WPSL Port St. Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast.